Everything. Well, I've been collecting for a number of years about Black cartooning and Blacks in comics and everything. So when I got this, and then I opened it, and
Thank you very much. I mean, it's been a project I've been working on for almost 20 years now.
yeah,
And I started back, well, it was because of Matt Baker, if you're familiar with Mr. Baker at all. And he's one of my favorite artists. And what happened was when I started researching him, there was no information to be found anywhere about him, other than the fact that people knew he was Black, but that was all they knew. So all these inquiries I kept making, finally somebody said, hey, have you ever spoken with Mr. Samuel Joyner, who was this retired Black cartoonist living in Philadelphia, worked for the Philadelphia Tribune. And I contacted Mr. Joyner. I got back the most wonderful 4-page letter I've ever gotten in my entire life. He wrote me this letter talking about meeting Baker, E. Sims Campbell, Ted Shearer, Mel Tapley, all these people that he had met when he was a young man. And I was stunned. I'm going like, here's a person who actually met these guys. So we communicated back and forth, and he sent me some newspaper clippings and some photocopies, articles he had discussing these men. And using that, I started doing my own research. But the problem was there was nothing in the white media about any of these men. So what I had to do is I started thinking, I said, wait a minute, I'm looking at from the wrong perspective. And what I did is I started using Black media. I started using Black newspaper.
yes,
And I mean, it sounds logical, but it was a very, very hard thing to do, because at the time, there's no one huge archive of Black newspapers.
Unfortunately,
which stunned me, So what I had to do, Dr. Hayden, was I had to just start contacting libraries in
yes,
universities and stuff like that on my own, over
yes.
these years, and piecing together all this information, and that's why it took me 15 years to do this, and it's something that's ongoing. Now there's much more access, because of the way things have developed, online, but it totally opened my eyes to a different world, looking at things from, the Black media's perspective, as opposed to the white media's perspective, which I've known my entire life, and it's, like I say, it was a humbling experience for me. I learned a lot, but that's what I'm trying to get across with this book.
Well, it's wonderful because you're touching on, and for everybody that's tuned in with us, there were pioneers in African-American newspaper publishing. That's why they had to have the media that concentrated on the community. There was Johnson Publishing, Mr. John
Exactly.
H. Johnson, with Ebony and Jet. And there was almost a joke in the Black community, like you could only find out news from Ebony and Jet, and especially Jet. You'd see things there that would never make it. And things that everyday life, like weddings or other aspects of Black life that would never be reflected. So to have you do the research and that dedication, so many people appreciate that you did take the time, and you probably had to go to different cities at times.
Oh, like I say, I'm obsessive compulsive when it comes to research. Okay. Just like I was speaking to Megan earlier before we started here, I've been to the Library of Congress a few years back. I met with Sarah Duke.
Yes.
Yeah. And anyway, that's what I'll do is I'll go anywhere and do anything to find out what I have to. I'll go around any rabbit hole I have to try to find information in that. And like I say, it's been such a rewarding experience for me personally, above and beyond just, accumulating information, because I learned a different world. I learned a different way of thinking. And you talk about, opening your eyes and opening your mind. And that's what, again, I hope that people get from this book, is because I've had so many people contact me since the book has come out who've never read, know nothing about comics, for instance. And they go like, oh my God, we didn't realize that all the, what these Black people had to go through. It sounds weird to say that. It's one thing to hear about the Black experience, in the United States. It's another thing to read newspaper articles and to read about men who actually endured all those, those horrible things.
I got a chance to have a similar conversation with Congresswoman Lee about it's typified in the poem by Langston Hughes, What Happens to a Dream Deferred.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about generations of talented people, African Americans in the arts, music, all of these different fields that could not be their true selves or have their talents appreciated. And
Exactly.
Your book points out just one aspect of life where creativity was either you had to ignore your identity, like the gentleman who passed for white. And that was also
right.
like that Kirby gentleman with Crazy Cat, I believe it was.
Oh, Harriman. Yeah, George
Harriman. Right. Yeah. Who was African-American, but had to suppress that in the whole New Orleans thing, and this gentleman too. So this dreams deferred, but being able to see it and have the validation they existed, hear their stories, that's what your book brings to life. And I was so pleased when I was going through it, because I had to order it as soon as I read about it and everything. And then to see the chapter that featured Congresswoman Lee's father, and it really made, it was just so exciting.
Well, thank you. And like
and
I say, I'm very excited.
And as the Librarian of Congress, what I do, we are, the library for Congress primarily and the people it serves. So I put on my Librarian of Congress hat and said, we have to let Congresswoman Lee know. This is the book, and I took a photo of the page and sent it, everything, so she would know. So thank you for letting me be the Librarian of Congress and give a reference to a member.
I appreciate that. I certainly do. Thank you very much. I can't wait to speak with her in a minute. Like I was.
Well, we hope she's coming on. She's going to come on, because you did quote her in the chapter.
I did.
Too.
And
I don't know.
And if I could just mention, that was, to me, was one of the most touching things, is when I read what she reads into the congressional record about her father on Father's Day. Like right now, I get a chill kind of, because I know how I feel about my father.
Yes.
And, how most people do about, their parents and stuff like that. And you can feel the love and, affection she feels for her dad. And that's why I'm so excited about the prospect of speaking with her here.
Well, it means a lot, because as children and adult children and she's accomplished so much in her life, but to have the recognition of him and what role he probably played in having her become who she is too.
Exactly. Like I say, it's none of us do it alone. Nothing happens in a vacuum, and there's people who came before us who made it possible for us to get to where we are now. And you could see that with her father. Unfortunately, it took me years to even accumulate what I did about her family. And that's why I'm excited about the prospect of learning even more. Because her family came from Jamaica originally, and they were immigrants here. In the early part of the century, and it just went from there. Her grandmother was a single mother in 1940, and she was raising Ezra and his brother alone and stuff like that. And Ezra still managed to get into one of those magnet schools there in New York, which you don't just walk into. You have to test into those. I mean, I don't know if people understand. He went to high school for industrial art, which is one of those specialized schools in New York. And you have to test into those schools. You have to have not only be talented in a artistic or musical way or something like that. You also have to be academically proficient to get into. So only the best of the best students got into those.
Well, Representative Lee, Congresswoman, are you on?
This is Garrett, her staff member. She's just wrapping up but one
Oh, well,
other
she's
thing.
a little busy being a member of Congress. That's okay.
So
So
she'll
we've
be
been
jumping on.
talking and doing that, and that's what I wanted to bring up. Now, I just got a book also, sir, about Jackie, is it Orms?
Forms,
So-
yes, yes.
So
And,
there seems to be renewed interest in Black cartoonists or
Yes.
Black comics now.
right. See, Jackie Orms, people have asked me why didn't I include Jackie Orms in this book? My entry point is comic books. Jackie Orms was a comic strip artist,
Yes.
and she worked only exclusively in the Black media. She worked for the Chicago Defender, for instance, for years. You know, and there have been books written about her and stuff. And I'd love, believe
I
me,
just
I'd
got
love,
it, yeah.
right, you know, and there's been a lot of research done on her. I've been desperately trying to see if there's been any Black woman who've worked in comics during, you know, that period there. But again, you know, there's different levels of discrimination in this country. You know, there's discrimination against Black, and there was discrimination against women, which I don't even have to tell you folks about.
Right.
You know, it's so there's that might have been, you know, an impediment for her, you know, even to get into comic books.
Right. Now, Megan, you know, our experts are on, and I don't know if they're on yet. Okay.
There's
Megan, and
Hi.
also, are we joined by another?
Georgia Higley. Sorry,
And
Mike.
Georgia, okay. So Ken, can I call you Ken?
You
Well, I
certainly
just did.
can.
I just did. So you have our two experts on, and they're going to bring up and show some things, but maybe they could bring a little light onto this thing about women being in the comic field in general too, because
Sure.
I know it came up with like the Disney thing and that, and they were anchors or something, but not this. So Megan and Liz.
Yeah. Well, so actually it's interesting. The Martha Kennedy, who worked in the prints and photographs division for a number of years, she just retired. Her book,
Right.
Women Cartoonists, I'm blanking on the name. But so she actually did a bunch of research about that too. And, you know, it's sort of difficult because a lot of the women who were working in comic books, you know, were, like you said, Ken, inkers and pencilers, and they didn't get full credit on their issues. And that's kind of a historic problem, I think, in a lot of comics, is that, you know, one, like the main artist would get credit or the editor, but everyone who contributed to it, which did include women, they weren't recognized. And so one of the women who we were able to feature in, a comic artist who we were able to feature in Martha's book and show, was Marie Severin.
Oh yes, I've
the
met
library
Marie before.
has a couple.
You've met her.
Oh yeah, she passed away, but wonderful, wonderful
Recently,
woman.
yeah.
Well, we have to send you a copy of the book, kid, so we'll get your information.
Okay,
It's a great book. It won an Eisner.
I'd love to read it. Yeah. I'm one of the books I'm working on. It's been one of the projects I had put aside while this is all going on. Is on Gladys Parker. Are you familiar with Gladys Parker, cartoonist?
Mm-mm.
Gladys Parker was a female cartoonist who started back again in the 1920s. She became one of the highest paid cartoonists in the world. She was by far the most successful female cartoonist up through the 1940s. She had a comic panel called Mopsy, and it became a comic book as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
They know. See, look at that. They know.
I didn't know the name behind it.
Yeah.
They
you know,
know.
amazing woman.
It's
She was
embarrassing.
also a fashion designer. Okay, when she was a teenager, she started her own dress design company, and this is a woman, you know, a young woman. She was designing dresses, which were sold all over the country. You know, she had huge ads. They were some of the most exclusive shops would carry her dresses. She was also a cartoonist. She became a very wealthy woman and stuff like that. And she had a fascinating personal life, which is one of the things I've been researching. Again, this is one of those things that's taken me over 10 years so far I've been working on. This is how all my projects go. They take forever.
You're a real author. It takes time.
Well, you got to. I mean, anyway, but hopefully in the next year or so, you'll be seeing a book on Gladys Parker and that, because an amazing woman. She has a life story, which is like unlike anybody else I've researched in that. And, I can't wait to finish this book, because a lot of people get a lot out of it.
Now, where was she based? Where did she?
Well, she was from Tonawanda, New York, up by Buffalo originally, but she went to New York. She originally worked for the New York Graphic. I don't know if you know what that was. You know, that Scandal mag that used to be back in the 20s.
Oh, Elizabeth, I don't know.
Yeah, but anyway, she started there. But then she took after Ethel Hayes. If you remember who Ethel Hayes is, probably the top female illustrator of early part of the 20th century. Incredible artist. If you look up the name Ethel Hayes, she took over a comic strip from her when she was 19 years old called Flapper Fanny. Excuse me, that's what it was. It was a flapper strip. Well, that's what got Gladys Parker going. And then she eventually got her own panel called Mopsy. But like I say, a fascinating story in that. I can't wait to tell it. You know, it's one of these.
Can you give us a little preview? Because now you've got me really interested.
She was involved with well, she was involved with all these Hollywood people.
I'll ask, guys.
Yeah, she was involved with all these Hollywood people. She had her own dress shop on Hollywood Boulevard. And so she lived right amongst all these people. And she dated all these famous movie stars. And there's all these scandal stories about her and everything. It's really interesting. It really is.
Good. Like I say, Hollywood Babylon, my favorite.
Exactly.
book.
It's a matter of fact, you mentioned that, but she was close friends with a lot of these people, like Louise Brooks and all that stuff like that.
Oh,
if you're familiar with those. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I said,
that was a swift crowd.
Yeah. And her even though she was married, at the same time she was dating this boxer named Slapsy Maxie Rosenblum. He used to be in films. It's like her story goes on and on and on. It's
something.
It's a movie in the waiting. In that, I'll tell you, it's a great story.
Okay, I say Charlize Theron. Okay,
that would be a good choice. There you go. Yeah,
sounds like it. But that's the joy, and you're expressing something, Ken, that as librarians, and we love to hear the joy of discovery and research and those rabbit holes. And it takes time, especially with the nonfiction, to do the research, but it's such a joy. And you have that joy of a researcher, you can tell.
I do. I just love it, Dr. Hayden. Like I say, I've been doing this personally for 50 years. I've been doing this kind of stuff. So I just love it. One other story. I want to tell you one other story once I got time. I know I'm boring you, but
no, this is fun.
It's actually about a librarian who's probably saved comic books in the 1940s and 50s. Her name was Josette Frank. Josette Frank worked for the Child Study Association of America, and she was the child's reading specialist for Child Study Association of America. She was hired in 1940 by Superman Incorporated, which was the overriding company that watched over the franchise of Superman, to first read over the scripts for the Superman radio show, but then she started reading scripts and that for DC Comics. And she's the one who basically changed the character of Superman into what he is today. Because at the time, Superman, in the early 40s is when all this controversy started about whether comic books are detrimental to the, the intellectual health of children and stuff. Well, she was the one who fought against that, and she had the credibility to do it. Long story short, she spent the next, 20 years giving the best defense for comic books against Dr. Frederick Werdum. Matter of fact, they even had a debate and everything, and they would write letters back and forth. An amazing, amazing woman. She was a librarian. That was her thing. Yeah, she is. And I've already written
feisty fighters for freedom.
There you go. But I have a 5-part series that I wrote about her, but eventually I want to expand it into a book.
Do that.
Because just an amazing woman. I mean, she went up against, I called the thing alone against the storm, because by the mid-50s, she was all by herself defending comics. And she was in the Senate hearings that they had in 1954. They tried shaming her and throwing her under the bus.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was horrible what they did to her in print and that, but she stood up there and she still, you know, fought against all these guys. And she did it by herself. Amazing woman. Josette Frank.
Josette Frank?
Yep. Matter of fact, there's a reading award named after her, a children's book award named after Josette Frank.
Well, I say former children's librarian, but you see I'm surrounded by, this is in the children's literature section, and my professor, Zena Sutherland, Children and Books right here. So yeah, I'm going to look her up because I'm sure there are things in some of our
She was around for years, and she gave all her personal files and everything to the Bank Street Association, I believe it's called. Library up, and it all exists in one spot, which is where most of my research came from. Oh, hello, Congresswoman Jackson Lee.
Oh, you see it? I can't see it.
Can you see her yet? Well, she's officially on yet.
That could be user error. That happens to me a lot these days.
Oh, me too.
It's not the computer. It's not the computer, but I will definitely look up Miss Frank.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
Congresswoman. Hello. We have
Hello.
had such a wonderful time talking with Ken, the author. We're excited, and I got to do a book talk.
Well, Congresswoman, I'm honored that you spend a few minutes with us and talk to me in that. Like I was telling folks here earlier, I'm honored, you know, that you'd spend some time with me, because for me as a historian, this is the first time I've had an opportunity to speak with a family member of one of the invisible men, you know, from my book, and that I'm tremendously excited to even talk to you about it.
Well, let me tell you how tremendously excited I am, Ken, to meet you, and you can be gratified by your relationship with the Library of Congress and the Carla Hayden, who is a matchmaker. That's really what she does. And she matches books and interests and good spirits. And, you know, I've just reignited my love of libraries. I was a library lover from a child. Amazing. And a library lover as an adult. And you get into Congress and you sort of go into a brain fog because you're reading legislation night and day. And you don't get a chance to get dusty. I graduated from Yale undergrad. And if anyone knows that college, they had a dusty library, meaning that they had books from, you know, the early on history that you would be doing your, and I guess I want everybody to know I'm 21, but at the time we had to do dusty book research, meaning our papers were not Googled and our papers were not, you know, on the internet. So we had to go to the dusty books. And I just developed a great love for history. So how you found this, I don't know, but you have warmed my heart. And I'm so grateful to you and the Library of Congress. And I think there are two young librarians or young women that I met maybe on, and I just want to thank them so very much for their comic book genius that they have developed this line of research in the Library of Congress.
Well, like I say, I'm honored that you're on here with us and that. And like I said, you know, your father was actually one of the harder people for me to research now, because there wasn't that much information to be found. And that's why I'm so excited about, you know, having an opportunity to speak with you here to try to fill in some of the blanks that I have.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But can you just tell me though, that was I fairly accurate with your family's history as far as you know?
You from what I can see, and I think you're still to send me the book, are you not?
Yeah, it should have arrived. They sent it to you. I believe they FedExed it to you a day or two
down
ago
to
than that. If not, I'll make sure that they
yes, they sent to Houston.
They did.
Okay,
that's
probably
let me be looking. You have a book?
Oh, there's a book there? Great.
No, that's what I'm saying. Did it come? Yeah, my office is going to check. But let me just get to the framework and say, yes, you had a basic framework.
Right.
And I'm excited about the basic framework because I know that there probably was not, didn't capture. It was in the 40s, and he graduated from the high school in the early 40s.
Right.
And that my grandmother had 4 sons,
Mhm.
and all 3 of them went off to World War II. And so he came under the rule of leaving a remaining son for a widower, because she was a widow rather. And so her 4 sons were her means of support. And when I say that, she obviously, her life was working in the homes of white families. And that was her work. And she had these 4 sons, but each of them went off except the baby, which was Ezra, which they had all their hopes and dreams in.
Yeah, well, like I was explaining in Carlos, Dr. Hayden.
Yeah,
sorry.
Carla.
I'm sorry. I explained earlier that your father went to School of Industrial Art, which was one of those magnet schools in New York, which people have to appreciate. It was not just something you walk into. This is something you had to test into, and they took only the best of the best. And your father was one of the folks who, qualified, one of the young men who qualified to get into that school. So just in that in itself was an accomplishment that very few students had an opportunity to do, or even had the talent to do.
Well, that's what I most loved about what you did. You captured his uniqueness and special qualities way back then. And this was a truly, even though it was New York, but it was truly a segregated America. Not only was it segregated, it was brutal in its segregation, meaning that you really felt the pain.
Mhm.
You were actually denied things that you couldn't, because as you well know, even for my uncle was fought the Italians, and others went somewhere else. I know the one oldest son went to Ethiopia and fought against the Italians. But the idea of them going in, and they were in a segregated military, even though they were there to fight and shed their blood for this country. Those stories I heard as well. So even in the ultimate desire to wear the uniform and serve in the United States military, World War II was fought with a totally segregated military. My father-in-law was a Tuskegee Airman. So you really captured the uniqueness of him getting into that school, and that it was a school that had just, like you said, it just organized. And here he was raised by a widow. His father died in the 1930s from pneumonia at home, because who would have a doctor for colored people? He shouldn't have died of pneumonia at home. He was a breadwinner. He was a carpenter. He was, just keeping them as a family that, could at least have a decent life. And he dies at home with pneumonia. So that was left to my grandmother, to raise these 4 boys. And that was not 4 colored boys in the 1930s and 40s. And of course, what was the 3 to do that were old enough? They all went off to World War II and left her there with him, my father.
Right. Do you know exactly whether your father went right into working on comics after he got out of high school? It looks like he did. It looks like he graduated and started in comic books immediately at 17 or 18 years old.
He did.
That's
I don't
amazing.
know, they must have been standing outside the door.
Yeah.
Because what I know of, he went to, in quotes, Madison Avenue. I mean, that was story. He was in the high story buildings. And I try to tell people that comic books of that era were the movies of that era. I mean, people, even when I was growing up, young as I am, the newsstands was still a big thing in New York. And you could find the whole section of comic books. You didn't have to go to a comic book store. That was part of the menu in the newsstands across the city. And they were really big in the 1940s. They just told all kinds of stories. That was beating out newspapers almost, because of the type of stories that the comic books would tell. Yes, he went straight in. He didn't, go to college. And he never got back to college, but he went straight in from the high school, which really at that time, according to Madison Avenue, was a big deal. I mean, they were like grabbing him up.
Oh, yeah.
That he had got a PhD almost.
Yeah.
Right.
Were you aware that he had a drawing partner at the time that he was teamed up with a white man named Maurice Whitman?
I was not.
Okay.
not. That is interesting.
Well, see,
how does that?
Well, here's the whole thing, Congresswoman. During the 1940s, comic books weren't created the way that we think of it now. It wasn't just like an artist working for a company and going off and drawing a comic book. They used to work for comic shops, they call them, which is basically a studio that would package comics for publishers. A publisher, one of these guys from a comic shop who owned it would go to a publisher, and the publisher would say, I need 2 64-page comic books by next week. The owner of the shop would go back. He would hire as many artists as he needed to hurry up and crank out these comics as fast as they could. It was literally run like an assembly line. Okay.
Wow.
But the advantage for Black artists of the time is that you didn't necessarily have to work in the studio. So several of these artists I read about, they would go and pick up their assignment, then they'd go home and draw it. And the reason why they would do that, and your father probably could have spoke to you about this, was that they didn't have to publicly, personally face white publishers who often wouldn't give them assignments. So what they do is, these guys who own comic shops didn't care whether you were Black or white or Jewish or Italian or anything. They just wanted somebody to hurry up and draw this story. So these Black artists would go pick up their assignment, go home and draw it, then drop it back off. So they never even worked with their white coworkers. And your father was teamed up with this artist named Maurice Whitman, and they did a lot of work together, and they signed it together. And it was ironic the way they would sign it, because it was always like a pseudonym they would use. Like in some comics, they would use the name Ezra Whiteman, okay, for instance. And I know, or a couple other pseudonyms that they would use were combinations of their name. And what it was is that one or the other would pencil the story, and the other one would ink it in. If you understand what I'm saying, like, you would draw it in pencil, and then the other artist would do the inking part of it, and then they would turn in the assignment. And see, and that's the situation with your father. That was most of the artwork that he did in the 1940s was done with Maurice Whitman. And as far as I know, matter of fact, if I could just show you something really quick.
Did you ever find anybody of his family?
Maurice Whitman? Yes, I did. Now, here's what's an interesting story is I contacted Maurice Whitman's son, who owns a tattoo shop down in Miami, Florida, okay? Of all things. And I asked him, I said, did your father ever talk about working with Ezra Jackson? He never even had mentioned Ezra Jackson to him.
Yeah.
Okay, so either one, he was denying the fact that he worked with a Black man, which is very possible. Or two, he never physically even met him because of the way the comic shops were run. It may have been where your father was dropping off his assignment, and then Whitman went ink it, or vice versa. You see what I'm saying? So it was a very weird situation. But they did a lot of comics together. Here's one right here, if you can see it. It's called Patches.
Yes.
It's in poor shape, right? This particular comic I have right here. But they signed it Whitman and Jackson. And almost everything your father did during that time period was done with Maurice Whitman, except for this story. This is the only story from the 1940s that has your father's name on it.
Yeah.
He did all the work on it himself. He penciled and inked it. Unfortunately, it's an extremely rare comic book, to find in that. And if I just show you one other thing.
Yeah, and how did you find that? Is that in the library?
A lot of work, a lot of digging, Congresswoman. Let me tell you, I spent years finding this stuff. And it's not an easy chore. He also did, one of the last things he did in the 1940s was this issue of Classics Illustrated.
Yes. Which
it was drawn by him and Maurice Whitman, the entire book, including the cover. And I'm pretty sure your father was the lead artist on this. He was the pencil artist. afterwards, I'm going to mail you this issue. I'm going to give you this. This is an original
Oh,
1947 comic.
wonderful.
Isn't
And I'm
that
gonna-
unbelievable?
I'm going to give it to
Uh,
you because I
I'm
think
gonna be back on the
you should
floor of
have
the
it.
house again. Yeah, I'm gonna be,
Okay.
Carla,
Okay.
he put in the segment that I saw of the book, my tribute to my dad,
Yes.
and way back in 2007. I don't know what the circumstances were, but
On Father's Day.
his story, I guess it was the story of what happened to him
Right.
in terms of having to leave the industry when the soldiers,
And that's,
or,
you're
you know,
exactly right. That's exactly
right.
what happened.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
what they were doing is just like the Rosie the Riveters, you know, the women who were
Yes,
working here in
yes.
Detroit. You know, that's what they were doing. They were, you know, filling the space of these white artists. Because what happened a lot in World War II, the early years of World War II, local draft boards would pass over black men who were eligible for the draft because they didn't know if they would be loyal enough to serve in the military. So until 1943, late 1943, draft boards usually didn't even draft black soldiers.
Unbelievable.
It is. It's like I say,
Or
it's
believable.
stunning. It is.
Or believable.
Well,
Well,
it is.
Congresswoman, I know you have to, oh, excuse
Yes,
me, Ken,
I
but
know.
Congresswoman, you have
Yep.
to do the people's business, I know, but we wanted to make sure that you had this opportunity. And Ken, you can correspond with the Congresswoman and send her that
Sure.
copy, though we're jealous.
Well, you're going to get the rest of my collection. So,
Oh, gosh. Well, let me say this. She's right. We're all obviously running, but you're a hero in my book.
thank you.
Ken and Dr. Hayden has always been a hero, but you're truly a hero for these unsung heroes. I just want to give this one little anecdote, Carla, to him. What I do remember is, and I don't know where it might be, I remember that flat black case
Mhm.
that
Wow.
you have to carry the drawings in. And I think it was there when I was growing up, you know, so that means he still had it. And I do remember, obviously, he must have said something to us, me as I was getting older, about the idea of being pushed out of the industry. And I will tell you, it was a very sad, it really hurt him.
Oh, yeah.
And he seemed to suggest that there were others similarly situated, which I'll never forget. That, you know, the talent, I mean, I'm sure he would have continued on being the ghost. He wouldn't have even minded, but they cut him off completely in terms of opportunities for the industry, which I think really speaks to what, you know, what our history in this country has been and what it has done to deny talent, to deny desire, to deny patriotism, if you will, the love of our country, and it has denied it. So take a few years down the road of having to be engaged in all manner of odd work, if you will. I just want to leave it at that for the family support. But it did create a sense of despair because
Imagine. Yeah.
he was not able to, and I assume my dad, very smart, would have probably ultimately continued drawing it and going to college. But you can't, if you get broken, if you will, and you've got a family, you can't do it. But on the backside of that, he came all the way around. Are you familiar with the Black comics that he did in the 1970s?
Yes, I am. The
Okay.
Golden Legacy comics.
Yes. Okay. And so that brought him back. And he was what, way up in his 60s, or I don't know, I can't remember what age he was. And he went after like a, you know, a thirsty man in a desert. And at his age I could see him. And I remember we had the, so I think you're right, because he must have brought it from home when he was living with his mother. And it was in our house. It's the slanted
The
drawing
board.
table. Yeah. That he would sit at on a stool in the house and do the drawing. I think I went up to an office one time, I think, when he was back with doing the 70s, because then he had to actually go to an office. They had actually had a building, but he had that, and you know, you don't keep things. I don't know where that little slanted art table was, but you know, we could always get him to do things for us for school or do things for communities, all for free. and you didn't get a sense, you know, you just kind of took it for granted, this amazing talent. And it pains me all the time, but it gives me joy that we have this moment now. But it was painful.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And I think Megan, and you have some things too you wanted to show the Congresswoman before.
I do. I thank you. Hi, Congresswoman.
And I would say thank you to you all at the beginning.
Yeah, I think you might have corresponded with my colleague Erin Sidwell, who may have shown you some of these before, but the library has quite a few of the Golden Legacy issues, and so this is number 1, and you can see a lot of our comics actually come through copyright deposit, but we also get materials. So those stamps that you see there are from the copyright deposit procedure.
We do that, yeah.
Great.
We do that less now, but the one of the things that I wanted to show you was so even by issue 2, your father was credited as an artist.
Yeah.
In the initial page, and so
cool.
This is number 3, and I believe he worked as an artist on this one, and then he actually signed number 4 on the inside. Where's the signature? I believe it's in the lower right corner there. Yeah, sorry, yes, left. And then also I believe this cover, you can see on the pink large book, it almost looks like an artist's paint palette. It was really interesting to kind of see his various signatures in some of the comics. And so this is another story that we found that he did about Walter White. And then, you know, one of the things that I think Ken does, and, you know, talks about is sort of the history behind some of those comics, like the early publications that we have at the library, including Negro Heroes. And this is an interior scan of all Negro comics. It's actually on display at the moment. So I couldn't get a scan of the front. The front is interesting because it uses a lot of stereotypical imagery of Black people at the time. But it has a really great profile of the man who, Evans, thank you, who created this book. And, you know, here's another one that we acquired a few years ago, actually for a researcher who requested it. And so now we have the whole set. We're the only library in the world to have the entire set of Negro romance.
Wow.
Great.
And I'm hoping that we can get some more writing done on that one. But a couple of those are actually on display in a current exhibit on the library's website if you want to check them out. So I'll stop sharing now. But I think you saw some from my colleague Erin, but we're actually hoping to get. We are missing a couple issues, so we're actually hoping to be able to get a few more of those so that we have a complete set at the library.
I love it. Can you put those legacy ones up again real quickly so I can see them from the start and then flash them real quick? What you have?
We can send you some of that too, can't we, Megan?
Yep, I can send you this PowerPoint or
PDF. That would be great.
So this is issue number 1.
Okay.
And what's interesting, Congresswoman, there's an artist that's listed, Tom Feelings.
Exactly.
Who went on to be a noted children's book illustrator too.
Wow.
Well, he was a contemporary of your father, Congresswoman. And actually, I'm working on a second volume of Invisible Men, and Tom Feelings is one of the stars of the book. You know, he's one of the main men that I'm writing about.
Yeah, and he had a time at first getting into children's literature and getting recognition. Same story.
Same story. That's great. And what is the name of the it skips my memory, the name of the African-American who was, I guess the visionary behind these Golden Legacy. Did you get his name?
That was Bertram Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Did your father ever speak about him?
I think that Fitzgerald rings a bell. I think he.
Yeah.
I think
because
that person.
that was quite an undertaking, to do that at
Yes.
a time when there was no
And
other
to
black
find-
men doing it.
And
And
to
to find
find
the
my
artist.
father and others, he had to
Right.
find them.
Yeah.
Because I remember him saying he got this call to come, he must have looked them up.
Yeah.
And that took a lot when
Yes,
you think
it did.
about it.
And I
And
think
a
he worked
lot.
with him for at least a decade, it looks like, about 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That
So
took
you did-
quite a bit.
It did, took amazing work. So, Ken, can I have your cell, or do you have a way for me to? Get
Yeah,
back with us?
I'll email it to you, Congresswoman.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that way you can have that. And like I said, I'll be sending along this comic book to you because I think it's only right that you have it, and you can pass that on to
Wow.
your children or grandchildren or
That's what I'll
whatever.
do.
And
Frame
Ken, and Congresswoman, I hope
Yeah.
that when Ken does that it's a way that it doesn't have to go through some of the security things that, because in terms
Yeah,
of the materials, you might want
asked
to make a special way because we
The
get
district
things.
office, I asked him to send, is that, Ken, did you send to Houston?
Yes, we
1919
did.
Smith? Okay, well, we
Yeah.
got to really check on my, excuse me. What did you say about it? Is there anything up there? No, why did they send to Washington?
Ooh,
I told them not to do that, but okay.
No, yeah,
yeah,
I hope not.
things
Well-
get, so that's why the actual.
I'll take care of it
comic book
I'll take care of it myself, and I'll make sure it goes to your office
Yeah.
in Houston.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. I'll have to
Without the
check.
radiation.
No, I know. I've seen the results of their radiation.
thank
I
you.
can tell you that.
It's,
That's why I can't imagine that they must have sent it to the wrong. Let me check. Wow. Okay.
well, if not, Congresswoman, I'm going to be over there physically next week, so I might let you look at mine.
Okay.
Well, I'm
So you
honored
get
that
all
you'll get a copy. So
All right.
make sure. Well,
Great.
thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming and
Oh,
spending a few minutes with us. Like I say, I was truly honored. And as I was explaining to Dr. Hayden earlier, when I read your tribute to your father and that, I got choked up myself because I'm always very close to my father. And
Yeah.
you could just tell the love and affection you had for him. And I really identified with that. And I appreciate that.
Well, I was truly daddy's girl, so it's probably look a little bit like him as well. Both my mother and mixed together, but in any event, we were. My grandmother, his mother, lived with us, so yeah, it was a close knit family, and we were an example of America of that era, and
Yeah.
what happened to Black men with a variety of talents. To be
Mhm.
honest with you, we had a graduating from law school. You went to work in the post office as
That's
a
right.
law graduate in that era because no one would hire you until maybe a decade or two later.
the
So,
Pullman porters,
yes,
Pullman porters, there were PhDs
That's
riding
right.
the Pullman trains.
In
That's right.
1940, the largest employer of African Americans in the United States were Pullman porters.
Yes.
Yeah.
That, which is stunning to even think about that, but it's true. It's just like I said, I did so much research, in reading the different materials and that, and it totally changed my perspective on American history because I looked at American history through different eyes, and I wish everybody could. I will hope everybody could. I just wish they would teach this in our schools.
That's what we need.
Yes,
We're working
I
on
agree.
it. We're working
Hey,
on it.
I'll help.
And-
Get stories out there.
Well,
Yeah.
let me just make this final point. I know we're all going, but
Yeah.
the state that I live in, Texas, still calling itself the Republic of Texas.
Right.
You don't know, we had a period where the state school board ruled out teaching any African-American history because they said it distorted American history, that they would say things that were not true. Of course, because it talked about slavery, et cetera, et cetera. And we only just got it back in the last year.
Right.
They had
Wow.
ruled out teaching African, I think Hispanic history probably was not even on the table. So I think they both come back at the same time, which is why I'm so passionate about something called HR 40, which is a commission to study and develop reparation proposals, which I'm, trying to let everybody know it's mainstream, because it has taken a moment to really study the systemic and continued impact of slavery and its experiences on the African-American population today. It's not an excuse-laden effort. It is a fact-finding effort that then will lead to maybe some positive, comprehensive solutions that we've just missed doing. So it comes back to the history and experience I had with my dad.
Right.
And I'm just grateful that you did capture it. You did.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much. I said it was my honor, and and I feel like it was almost my duty, to do this, as I made these discoveries, and I continue to do it. I said I was working on something earlier today in relation to a Black artist. It's something I just keep doing, and I will keep doing it. I'm 68 years old, and I will keep doing it until I can't anymore.
Well, you are
you.
you are a true asset and a gem yourself, because you're doing work. It's always good to find history and to preserve it, because who are we?
Exactly.
The famous words, Carla, if
Yes.
you don't know your past, the expression is you're doing it repeated. But I'd like to say, if you don't know your past, you can't build on your future. If you don't know what happened in the past.
Exactly.
Well, Congresswoman, I would just want to
Thank you very much,
Ken,
Congresswoman.
and thank Ken for the research and the dedication. And Congresswoman, I think as one daddy's girl, look at you right there.
Musician.
Look at the backdrop. And I think that is, talk about poetic justice.
Wow,
Where you are.
You're going to get me to be very emotional. I am going to call on you. I may want to do a roundtable on the idea of reparations, or what it means historically.
Well, if I could just say one thing.
I'll get back to the librarian and maybe talk about the books that are in the library on that issue.
If I could just mention something real quick as far as reparations, one of the men I cover in the book is George Lipscomb, and he was writing.
Oh, right.
And he was writing about reparations back in the 1940s. He was a big proponent, and he wrote. He made it. Matter of fact, he was covered in newspapers because he was saying that he was owed I forgot how many millions of dollars in reparations, because for all the work that that his family had done in the past. It's very interesting, and like I say, I covered a little bit in the book there, but it's just one of the many little tiny bits of history that I came across, and that's why I said it's an eye-opening experience.
Very good.
Well,
it's a pleasure. Thank you all.
Very hopeful and inspirational.
It is.
Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, have a wonderful, safe weekend. I think weather is strange all over the country.
It is.
So
it's cold here.
You have a safe weekend and a happy Valentine's weekend as well.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank
you. Touch.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. Someone.
And Megan, that was Megan.
Oh, she was saying bye. This was just a conversation, right? This is not a podcast I'm on, right? Colin?
No, but I made a recording of it, but it's okay. We don't have to share it with anyone, or however you want to do this. It's up to you.
Well, I didn't know if I was that erudite. I don't know what it looks like.
Oh, it's brilliant.
And your background is great.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, if bits and pieces of me talking
out.
about my father will, enhance the understanding, that's fine. I didn't know if I was really on my toes, being the superb person he'd want me to be. But in any event, I loved him. And he was a brilliant talent and a courageous man, and a person who overcame a lot, supported his widow mother till her death, and was a breadwinner when everybody else had gone to war. I think, this is the kind of traditional family that Negroes and colored people don't get attributed. That doesn't get attributed to us, that we were in the war, a segregated military. All three went. However they went, volunteered, drafted, whatever way it was, but it was a segregated military, and the younger son stayed and provided support, and he had a unique way to provide that support, and he was cut short through no fault of his own.
Exactly.
So I call him a great American.
It was
We do too.
truly.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Stay safe.
thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, would you want me to stop the recording right now then?
Well, and Ken, you know, this is Abraham Lincoln's birthday.
It is.
And also Kim Crawford's birthday.
Oh,
I didn't think you
know that.
remember. Thank you, Dr.
Oh,
Hayden.
how could I
Happy
forget?
birthday.
Thank
Ken
you,
may
thank
not
you.
know that I'm from Illinois. So, you know, they still celebrate Abraham Lincoln's birthday in Illinois. It's still,
Right,
it's not President's Day. We don't throw him in. And then when I found out that Kim's birthday is the same as Abe's, I was like, all right. So happy birthday, Kim. Now, isn't this a good birthday present for you?
It's the best. It's the best. Thank you so much, Dr. Hayden. Thank you,
Yes.
Megan. Thank you, Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you,
And-
everyone. And
yes,
Ken, it's
thank
been a
you all
delight.
very much.
So hopefully she'll get the book. I'll lend her mine, but you know,
Okay, well, thank
I'm
you
a
again.
librarian at heart.
Thank you all so much. I said this has been truly been an honor, and I'm really, thrilled that you spent some time with me in that. You're
Oh,
great
yeah.
people. And like I was explaining to Megan earlier, I have a very large and rare comic book collection, which I plan on probably donating to the Library of
Oh.
Congress in the next couple of years here.
We would be
So-
honored.
So
And there's no rush. And there's
Well,
no rush, Ken,
well,
now.
okay, well, I still got a little more research to do
Okay,
here and
you don't
stuff.
have to, you know, it's okay.
Okay, so just so you know, if you
All
get some
right.
boxes and that,
Take your
they're with my
time.
name on it,
Take your
right?
time. It's all right.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody.
All right.
Okay.
Have a
Thank
safe
you.
Take
time.
care.
We
All
hope
right,
to see
thank
you
you.
soon.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
The night bird calls and shadows creep into my mind, into my sleep. I do not know if I shall rise or open up these weary